Hello everybody, my name is Bob Polking. I'm a division substitute for the Social Studies department at a high school. The lesson we're going to be talking about today was a multi-day lesson I did filling in for a U.S. history teacher in 4 normal U.S. classes and 1 prep U.S. class. What we did was we examined the birth of the Constitution by comparing and contrasting the way the Articles of Confederation dealt with the legislative branch and the way the Constitution dealt with the legislative branch. We did this mainly through the use of iPad. The class I'm currently teaching is using a one-to-one iPad scheme that is part of a district-wide initiative to give students, as well as teachers, more flexibility when it comes to interactivity, note-taking, and other tools in the classroom. For the most part, the classes use a Weebly website, at which point the teachers will upload a file or multiple files to the website, and the students can then download that file for use in class. A vast majority of the students in these classes greatly preferred the use of the iPads for reading as opposed to the books that they had in their possession but didn't particularly like. A major complaint was a loss of context or place in the section when the student was looking to show either a teacher or a classmate something that they found valuable. According to one student, quote, "I love the search function. It makes finding stuff so much easier. I don't have to go digging through the entire text to find what I want." Now, I didn't completely throw out the use of books here, as the books were still available to students, and a decent number of students actually continued to use the book as it goes on. This is not a complete tonal cutoff, it's more of a tonal shift towards technology versus a complete jump into technology. The use of the books resulted in students sharing things a little easier, but they were also able to share highlights and everything via the use of their iPads. But it did allow students in groups to point things out quickly versus having to open up files. So books were available, but I did encourage the use of iPad usage just to get the students more and more used to this as we went through our project. In order to encourage more interactivity between students as well as just with the iPad, I had the students create various numbers of groups, some small groups, some large groups, that would be used at various points through the couple days that this lesson took over, so they would be able to share ideas, bounce ideas off of each other, and not have to rely solely on themselves for the learning load that was being presented to them here. The first stage in this assignment was to have the students look over the Articles of Confederation, specifically regarding the use of the legislative branch, or what we called the Confederation's Congress. What the students were asked to do was find the weaknesses and the strengths, if they could find any, in the Confederation's Congress, and apply that to the modern day. Is how would the world work right now in the United States if there were only one representative per state and they all had to agree for any changes to come about? According to one student, Caitlin, she said, quote, "I was surprised that there was no real central government." This was the sort of information I was looking for, as I wanted the students to really apply the rationale behind the Confederation's Congress to the real world today. The iPads were used to look at the Confederation's Congress. There were a list of different rules that the Congress had laid out and how that would apply. And the students were then asked to come up with modern day examples for how the rules of that Confederation's Congress would apply in this very day. Following this iPad-centric debate, the class moved into more of a multimedia look at the Articles of Confederation. We used our textbook as well as a about half-hour video, and the iPads again, for the students to really get a multifaceted view at the way the Articles Congress worked, its strengths, and the vast majority of its weaknesses, as well as coming up with reasons for why we needed a change to the Constitution that was currently in place. This was accomplished by having a class-wide discussion on the 2 major forms of inspiration for the current Constitution, being the Virginia Plan and the New Jersey Plan. The students were asked to read the Constitution and try to pick out and annotate what parts of the Constitution come from the Virginia Plan, favoring large states, and what parts that come from the New Jersey Plan, featuring small states, at which point they were asked to figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are and why they thought each section had been factored in as it was. The final step of this multi-day iPad-centric activity was for the students to use their iPads to annotate a list they'd been given of what are called the enumerated powers, which are the powers given to Congress by the Constitution. They were then asked to come up with ideas in smaller groups this time of an example of how these would be applied today. What they then did was they used their notes from the previous days to compare these abilities that Congress had been given under the new Constitution to the powers of the Articles Constitution, and were asked to determine by themselves and then together as a class which Constitution was better and give concrete reasons as to why. Regarding the use of the iPads on this assignment, one student, Wyatt, was quoted as saying, "I don't really like using the iPad, but I do find that using the notes on the iPad, in this case we're using Notability, was very helpful, and I really liked the way that I could share it with my classmates and they could share stuff back with me. It made everything a lot easier than just handing over papers and making copies at home." Following our final group analysis, the students were given two opportunities to employ their notes to improve their grades. First of all, they were given an iPad assignment that had them exploring the legislative branch using not only the enumerated powers but the rest of Article 1 of the Constitution. And then they were given a take-home quiz, at which point they could use any of their notes whatsoever to apply to the quiz and see how well their notes had really helped them out. The next day, upon returning to class, the students just had a couple more things to do to finish out this multi-day, multi-step iPad assignment. The first thing the students did was engage in a debate about what the best parts of Article 1 of the Constitution are and what they thought maybe needed a little bit of help. They were then given a final closed note quiz. Following the quiz, which most of the students ended up doing very well on, I asked a couple of them what their thoughts were on the lesson as a whole, as well as their feelings on the quiz itself. Regarding the quiz, one student, Patty, told me that, quote, "I felt really good when we took the quiz, especially the second one. We'd done it so many times before on various topics, like the Articles and the Constitution, and the first article especially, that I felt like I remembered all of it. It all really stuck with me this time." Obviously, I was pretty glad to hear that. And when I asked another student, Austin, who I'd had in a previous class, his response was much the same, is he had enjoyed the multimedia aspect of it. He didn't mind using the iPad, he wasn't a giant fan of it, but he liked using the iPad more than just using the book by itself, and he also enjoyed the movies and the group work. I believe that this multifaceted approach to the assignment really helped it stick as opposed to a lot of days of students merely reading and regurgitating information. The combination of group work and various uses of technology helped the students look at it from various perspectives and really find at least one way to engage with it on their own terms and really remember it for what it was and not just random facts that they've been given in a history class. Overall, I feel very good about this assignment and would be more than happy to give it again next time I have the opportunity. Thank you for listening, everybody.